in studio with me right now. I can't believe it. Buffy Sainte-Marie. Hi.
Hi, Tom.
How are you doing?
I'm trying to survive the trip here, but I'm okay. I'm glad to be here.
As long you never have to leave if you don't want.
Oh, thank you.
I can put a cot over there and a kettle in the garden. It'll be grand. I was thinking about you putting out a children's book, which we're going to talk a little bit about later. What kind of were you a ready kid? What kind of kid were you?
I was a ready kid. I loved to read when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when my son was born in 1976, I started raising kids. And over the years, when you're writing a children's book, I started it out for a 4-year-old, and by the time he was 10, I was saying, wait a minute. So one of the things I needed to do in my children's book, which is called Top Boy and the Magic Hat, I needed to figure out how old this little guy was. And there were just things that you learn when you've never done it before.
Yeah.
And Greystone Kids, which is a subsidiary of Greystone Books, they're the one who did Andrea Warner's biography of me, too.
Yeah, I read
So
that.
Greystone Kids really helped a lot. And we're putting out the book in Cree as well as in English, which is incredible. I just requested it of them, and by golly, they made it happen.
Oh, that's excellent.
Oh, I'm thrilled.
You could have made the kid 42 like your kid. You could have made the little kid into 42 years old,
I have a new respect for math. Thank you, Tom.
That entire answer, I was just doing that math.
You were, huh? I couldn't remember.
When did music enter your life when you were a kid? When did you first get interested in music?
Oh, first time I saw a piano.
Yeah?
I was probably about 3. And I went over and went plink, plink, and that did it.
Yeah.
So, I just, it was the funnest tool I had. I was crayons and paper and dance and sing, and just like most children are when they're about 4 years old and go to the beach, they do everything. Children are creative. Yeah. I think it's schools who start to tell you, you have to do just one thing. If you're a musician, you can't be an artist and blah, blah, blah. But I had a hard time in school in that I was told I couldn't be a musician because I couldn't read European notation. Turned out I was dyslexic in music.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't let me in band or anything, but I'd go home and I'd play the heck out of that piano.
What were you playing? What were you playing on the piano?
Anything I would hear on the radio, or we had a record player, and I liked Tchaikovsky, like Swan Lake, The Nutcracker Suite.
Okay, so you weren't playing rock and roll or anything like that. You were playing classical music.
No, there wasn't any rock and roll yet. This is in the 40s. So when I was about 12 or 13, along comes Little Richard, right? And Chuck Berry and Fats Domino. And by the time I was 15, I started going to the Alan Freed rock and roll shows. And I knew that's what I wanted to do. I knew I already had the music. I just didn't know what to do with it. But when I saw Joanne Campbell come out on a stage, right, she had that Southern girl attitude, and she was wearing a sparkly, long, sexy dress with a train and singing the heck out of this great Southern rock and roll. And there was Laverne Baker. There were the Everly Brothers. There was Elvis Presley, who was just my hero when he was 19. I mean, that's just what I thought I would like to do. So I was lucky.
Well, let's go back a little bit. So I want to talk about where you were born, and I want to do it through this song. Take a listen to this. I want to point out that came out the same year, 1976, as you were talking about your kid.
Did it?
That's Qu'Appelle Valley, Saskatchewan, off your 1976 album, Sweet America.
Can I tell you something about it?
Yeah, of course.
When I first tried to play it for another musician, my drummer always he couldn't say Qu'Appelle Valley, Saskatchewan, right? He'd always say, that song that sounds like a 3-legged horse. Because it's... Right? It's trying to do a round dance beat, which he had never heard before.
Oh, interesting. Mm-hmm. That's so funny.
Yeah.
And so you were born in Saskatchewan near Pye Pot First Nation.
We think.
Yeah, we think. Mm-hmm. Not long after that, you're in Massachusetts.
In Maine.
How old?
Baby.
Like months?
I don't know. Infant, though.
Brought to...
I guess.
Yeah.
They don't tell you. You have to understand what it's like to be an Indigenous person who has been adopted.
Yeah.
The records are sealed. You don't get to find out anything.
Yeah.
In the 40s, because it was... we must protect everybody's privacy, and why were they adopting, and what is it, so I don't know a lot, and that's one of the, it's not a terrible thing, It's not like residential schools,
No.
but it is. It's another part of the story of breaking the generations in the indigenous world. Kidnapping children and giving them away, selling them, rehoming them.
Not a lot of other indigenous people growing up in Massachusetts and Maine in your community, I would say.
Well, not that anybody knew of.
Yeah.
Of course, there were indigenous people in Maine, but the white people didn't know about it, or they didn't say anything about it.
But I mean, for your friends in your community when you were growing up.
No. The only other indigenous person where I was growing up was a wonderful man and his wife who ran a trading post, and he was Narragansett.
Yeah.
And so he really was the first just pure indigenous person that I had ever met. And he was kind of like a grown-up friend to me when I was a child. I'd go over to the trading post every now and then. I'd ride my bike around the lake and go and visit them. And they were always nice to me. And he used to make headdresses for the movies.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he was wonderful. Yeah.
And
his name was
his name?
Leonard Baird. He was Narragansett. And and my mom, who raised me, was part Mi'kmaq, right?
Yeah.
And but she didn't know anything about it, and he was kind of in the same boat because nobody knew anything about Narragansetts either. So when somebody doesn't know stuff in the 40s, they just kind of dismiss it and say, well, it's not important if I don't know it.
When did you go back to Saskatchewan? You went back when you were a teenager, right?
Yeah, I guess I was 18 or 19.
Why?
Why?
Yeah.
Oh, I was invited.
Oh, yeah.
I had met the Pie Pots at Wikwemicong. I had met Emil Pie Pot and John Rock Thunder and Henry Ironchild, a whole lot of Crees who were in a, I don't know, elders circle sounds really stuffy and formal, but actually they just said, we're going to go and have a meeting. I'm going to have a meeting with the old men. And so there were societies back in those days, societies of friends. And these particular people traveled around to powwows, and they were at Wikwemicong. And Emil Pie Pot and Clara Starblanket Pie Pot had lost 2 children, 2 daughters, and had 3 other children. And there's a tradition in many indigenous groups that if you lose a child, that you keep your hearts open for someone to fill that spot. And they thought that I probably needed to fill that spot. And so they adopted me. And I can just hear the listeners envisioning an adoption ceremony and, kind of like they do when the prime minister comes to town and they give him a feather hat and a name. But it wasn't like that at all.
No, you just went out?
It was just they just did. They adopted me and said, yeah, you're ours. So,
what was that like to go back to that place that you hadn't been there since you were born?
Well, I didn't even know if I came from there. That's the point. I mean, we don't know if we're blood relatives or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. I just don't know. But they became my new family. Whether they were my first family, I just don't know. But it's never mattered to any of us.
The Cree author, David A. Robertson, great author, and also does children's books and does a lot of great work. He talks a little bit about blood memory, like a sense of home for somewhere he hadn't been before. Did you get any of that when you went back to Saskatchewan?
Well, yeah, but I don't know if it was connected with what we would call reality.
Yeah.
I certainly felt like it.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not asking anything literal here. Did you feel something special when you went there?
I just felt welcome.
Yeah.
I felt safe, probably for the first time in my life. Because I was raised in a house in a neighborhood where there were predators all over the place. Oh. And so I felt safe. I had new sisters, my sister Brenda, my sister Cora, my brothers Ronnie and Alvin. They became my family. And, it wasn't like in the press. No. I didn't tell anybody for years anything about that. I got busted. I think it was the Toronto Star who busted us.
For what? What do you get busted for going home? What do you get busted for?
No. I mean, not busted. I mean, like revealed. They kind of outed me as being there. It was a winter day, and I'm sitting in the cabin with the Pie Pots. We're just sitting around. I don't know what we were doing, and there's a knock on the door, and it's snowy. It's awful, right? And there's this guy from Toronto newspaper who wants to interview me. Of course, I wanted to hide under the table.
Were you famous at this point? Were you
in Toronto? I was, but not in Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Toronto.
He went and found you.
He found me. I don't know how. And he did a big Sunday supplement. Those giant Sunday supplements they used to have. He did like a 3-page story on me. And family and stuff. But yeah, I didn't want to let him in. But my dad, who was so nice, he said, "Oh, come in," because that's how he is, right? It's just hospitality.
Yeah.
So that's when I finally. That's when people found out about my connection with the Pie Pots. But up until then, it had been totally private.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask? I've always wanted to ask you this.
Uh-oh.
No, it's. You were in New York in Greenwich Village, in the sort of coffee house era, the early 1960s. Dylan, the Clancy brothers and Tommy Makem, Dave Van Ronk, Joni Mitchell, Ian and Sylvia. To me, like, I have such an affection for that time. I've often, sometimes, people will ask you if you could live in any other time, what would it be? And mind you, I love living in this time right now, but if you could live in any other time, what would it be? I always say that.
That would be your choice, huh?
What was that actually like back then?
I loved it too.
Yeah?
I loved it too. Now, I wasn't a part of the social group, which is basically a business group, right? Like Peter Paul, Mary, Bob Dylan, Joan, they all had managers who were...
Yeah, they all had the same manager.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah, what was his name?
Well, Albert Grossman.
Albert Grossman, yeah.
And Manny Greenhill and Harold Leventhal. They kind of controlled the business.
Yeah.
And if you weren't part of their stable, that's
Yeah.
what they called it. If you weren't part of their stable, then you were kind of out of it. I mean, that didn't bother me because I'm such a hermit anyway. I don't drink, so after the show, I don't go out.
Yeah.
And party and celebrate and stuff. I don't know. I just don't care for it. So I stay in. So there was a lot of both social and business networking that I did not do.
So what's the story that I mean, I don't know this. I don't know that. I mean, you and I have talked a bunch of times, and I don't know this story. That you helped Joni out? You helped Joni kind of get into the industry? Is that right?
Well, I thought she was so good, and she couldn't get arrested. Nobody wanted to know about her, so she gave me a tape. I think it was at the Mariposa Folk Festival. She came to see me, and she gave me a tape. I think it was there. And I carried it around in my purse, and I played it for managers and agents. I played it for my record company. Nobody wanted to know. No, we're interested in you. We don't care about your friend from Saskatchewan, right? And finally, I was at Chardoff Winkler, which is a big agency. And the guy who was my agent, he didn't want to hear Joni either.
Yeah.
But a junior agent named Elliot Roberts...
Wow.
He said, "I'll go down and see your friend." And of course, he and Joni made a great career together.
I mean, and ends up making Neil Young's career too.
Yep. And I never saw much of Joni after that until recently. I went to visit Joni at her home. She had a stroke, so she's in a wheelchair. But it was so wonderful to see her, and we had some fun, And what was loveliest about our visit, besides just the little conversations that we had, was to see her artwork in her house. And her paintings, if you love Joni as a musician, then if you actually see her paintings, you'll love it even more. It's beautiful.
Here's something else I'm curious about. So back in those days, there were, we'll say we'll get a bit closer to like 64, 65. There's people are singing more and more, early 60s too, more and more anti-war songs, civil rights songs too. And God knows you did your share of that. One of your most successful songs. But you were on stage back then singing about indigenous rights. You were on stage back then singing about genocide. How'd that go over?
It was interesting, Imagine me on a stage at the Gaslight Cafe, a little basement coffee house, kind of like the same kind of thing like you'd see in Yorkville.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Purple Onion, small stage.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And the audience would sit there. I'd sing Now That the Buffalo's Gone, or a little bit later, My Country 'Tis of Thy People You're Dying, which really is just a list of facts. And the audience would just sit there, and some who'd heard it before or who already knew where I was coming from, they would just love it. But many people were just shocked. The audience would be college students, high school students, young people, and some, once folk music kind of started, being a high profile, there would be straight older people from a previous generation coming down too. And the attitude really was, the little Indian girl must be mistaken. Yes. So that has kind of been the reaction that I've been living with my entire career.
Mistaken as in that stuff didn't happen.
Oh, she's got to be elaborating. That's got to be exaggeration. It can't really. No, they didn't really do that at residential schools. So I think I was the first person to use the word genocide with regard to the North American Holocaust,
Yeah.
which, by the way, goes all the way through Central and South America.
Yeah.
It is all one thing.
Yeah.
The doctrine of discovery gave European explorers the right to, if you come across a land that has people living there, if they're Christians, then I guess one of our fellow countrymen got to them first. So you got to leave them alone because we don't feel like fighting with their king. But if they're not Christians, you are supposed to either enslave them, if you can convert them, enslave them, or you kill them.
Yeah.
But the land is ours. And so that's what happened. That's what the doctrine of discovery is about. And I'm so glad that the Pope is going to try to come to Edmonton. And God help him, I hope he gets better flights than I did. Because, no, it's really awful. It's really awful. No, flying very hard. It's not one airline. It's,
I hope the Pope gets better flights.
I hope so. But if he could rescind the doctrine of discovery, it'd make a big deal because that thing is still used in Canadian courts and in American courts today.
Yeah. How do you keep going when people are saying, "Oh, she must be mistaken"?
I know better. I just laugh them off. Okay. I'm a teacher, so I don't scold somebody for not knowing. You don't scold people who are ignorant. You give them something. You teach them.
I know, but you get back up on stage over and over again back then. That's what strikes me,
Well, I don't know. It's like Sesame Street taught me. They said there's always a new crop of 5-year-olds. So you can't get tired of delivering your message because it's always to new people.
We're going to talk about Sesame Street in a second. First, I want to talk to you about this. Take a listen to this.
Well, I went to see my Cindy standing by the door, shoes and stockings in her hand, little bare feet on the floor.
Get along home,
Cindy, get along home.
Who is that?
You.
I don't know who I'm with.
Pete Seeger.
I'll marry you someday.
Play it a little bit longer. Have you ever not seen this video? I'll show it to you afterwards. It's one of my favorite videos of you.
Is it on YouTube?
Yeah.
I'll look for it.
It's you and Pete Seeger, who, if you're listening to this, my guess is Buffy St. Marie, the Pete Seeger, the godfather of the folk revival, who at that point was blacklisted by the House Un-American Activities Committee for allegedly playing for communist groups. He gets a show called Rainbow Quest on public television. He brings you on. You're playing the mouth bow there, singing Cindy, Cindy, which is a great old song. Mm-hmm. Here's what I'm curious about that. Pete lived a very unique existence there, that he got blacklisted and he wasn't allowed to perform, and his songs were banned from television and songs were banned from the radio. It's unique, except that you lived it too.
I did.
Did you ever talk to him about it?
I did, but this might throw you around a corner because I love Pete and you love Pete. However, I had to go through the following process. I was doing a show with Pete, and was that Oscar Brand as well?
Yeah.
Anyway, there were a whole lot of artists, maybe Tom Paxton, Judy Collins, contemporary artists. And at the end of the show, we were supposed to come out on the stage and hold hands and sing, "This land is your land. This land is my land." What? You're asking me to sing that? This land is your land. This land used to be my land. And Pete insisted that I do it. And so I stood on the stage and I wasn't singing. I just wanted to cry. I felt so bullied. And so years later, I mentioned that to Pete, and he acknowledged it. He didn't at the time because he just thought that Woody Guthrie is God. This land is your land. This land is my land. But Indigenous people, don't forget, we're teeny tiny. We're less than 4% of the population. There are gazillions more other kind of people. We're really a small minority. So nobody knows about us. So the nicest person in the world, Pete Seeger, is uninformed about Indians.
The most benevolent, seemingly benevolent, fighting for the little man person in the entire world.
Exactly.
Even he doesn't have that knowledge. He doesn't think to do that.
Yes, and that's the way to put it, too. He didn't have that knowledge. But I'm a teacher, so I can give that knowledge.
Good for you.
So that's a blank that I can fill in.
What was the experience like of being blacklisted?
Oh, I didn't know about it.
You must have noticed.
No, I didn't know. It never occurred to me. When I when I finally found out that when somebody told me that I'd been blacklisted, I called my lawyer. I mean, not at first, but I thought about it. So I was talking to my lawyer, and I said, this guy said that he had a letter on White House stationery commending him for having suppressed my music, which deserved to be suppressed or something along those lines. And he said, well, we'll get your FBI files. And I said, I don't have FBI files. Are you kidding? I miss goody two-shoes, I don't smoke pot in the White House lawn. I don't throw rocks through the Bureau of Indian Affairs. I'm not that kind of activist. I'm different. All I am is a girl with a guitar.
Yeah.
And so the FBI said, yeah, we have files on her. Send her to Washington and she can read them. And my lawyer said, no, you guys may come to my office and she will read them in my office. So that's what we did. And sure enough, there were FBI files on me, pages, and all they showed was that I was not guilty of anything. But there was also a letter in those files from some woman who'd wanted to know about this Saint Marie character and was she some kind of terrible person or communist or something. And they said, we do have files on her, but we're prohibited from letting you know what's in them. So it does still cast a shadow, even though that they knew that I was innocent of everything. So once I found out about it, my career was over in the U.S. I could not, my records are no longer being played. I hadn't done. I was working mostly in Canada and Europe and Australia. So what happens to you when you're a musician on the road with a career and things, developing, things are happening and some days you're busy and some days you're not busy. It's just ordinary. It's real ordinary. And just the idea of being blacklisted had never occurred to me because, especially as a traveling artist, things come and go. They kind of come in waves. Like, oh, you got a hit in Sweden, but Italy doesn't know about it, right?
Yeah.
You got a hit in Canada, but the U.S. doesn't know about it. So I didn't know. It never occurred to me.
What's it like? Here's another thing I'm curious about. Elvis has hits with your music. Mm-hmm. Donovan has a big hit with Universal Soldier.
Everybody thought he wrote it. For years.
What's that like for you?
Well, it's still all over the internet. I have a package. I have a package of about 600 letters that Smithsonian Magazine very kindly sent to me when people wrote into them objecting that they had done a story about Vietnam soldiers writing their comments on tarps and bunks and chests and things. And they did a story on this one soldier who had quoted on his, I believe it was on a tarp, he's the one who gives his body as a weapon to a war, and without him all this killing can't go on, which is my Universal Soldier.
Yeah.
But Smithsonian credited, they didn't know. They said it was an unknown work. So they got over 600 letters. And they apologized to me. They called me up, they apologized, and they said, would you like us to send you the letters? And I said, sure. And of course, there's all kinds of, there's faxes, there's emails, there's handwritten letters, people who knew that I had written the song. But a lot of people were saying, you're crazy. Donovan wrote that song. This is not an unknown song, it's Donovan's song. And then somebody else credited it to another writer too.
Paxton or someone like that?
No, I think it was like Rod McEwen or someone, another writer. Yeah, I think it was Rod McEwen. Yeah. But anyway, a lot of people will still confront me and say that I didn't write Universal Soldier, but they just don't know. That's okay.
Did that drive you crazy? That
no.
you were getting blacklisted. You couldn't. Your career in the States was over, and here was Elvis and Donovan making a career off your music.
Oh no, we got to separate that in time. I didn't find out I had been blacklisted until the 80s.
Sure.
But I had been blacklisted for many, many years before, but I just didn't know it. I just thought, well, careers come and go. Yeah. I was popular in the U.S. for a while, and now I'm not. I felt lucky to be there anyway. I never expected to have a career.
Can we play something else? Let's take a listen to this.
What you doing, Buffy?
I'm feeding the baby. See, he's drinking milk from my breast.
That's a funny way to feed a baby.
Well, lots of mothers feed their babies this way. Not all mothers, but lots of mothers do.
Oh.
And he likes it because it's nice and warm and sweet and natural. And it's good for him. And I get to hug him when I do it, see?
Oh. That's nice.
It's my guest, Buffy Sainte-Marie on Sesame Street. That's the episode where you're breastfeeding your son, a first in TV history.
Mm-hmm. Sesame Street were wonderful. They really were. I was on Sesame Street for 5.5 years. They never stereotyped me. It's not always I wasn't the house Indian or something. We did work on a sibling rivalry.
Yeah.
Breastfeeding, multiculturalism, a whole lot of things. And I was nursing my baby. I was on Sesame Street for about a year. Then I found out I was going to have my baby. Took some time off. I had my baby. And then all of a sudden they said, we've never had a family on Sesame Street. And so me and Cody, my son, who was a baby then, and his dad, Sheldon Wolfchild, we were all on Sesame Street for a while. And the day that we did the breastfeeding one, the way that happened was I was breastfeeding him anyway, just off camera and stuff when he needed to eat. He didn't eat sandwiches. Yeah. And so I asked them, I said, should we do this? And they said, oh, it's a great idea. So we wrote it up and we did it, in a day or two. And it was just real easy.
Big reaction.
No reaction at the time, but big reaction since.
Oh, so at the time it wasn't...
It wasn't controversial, no.
Oh.
We didn't get any mail on it. No, I've taught, most of the people from Sesame Street that I knew have passed on now. But before they did, I asked them about that. No, they didn't have like a flood of mail about breastfeeding. And what was important about it is I had been blacklisted. I didn't know it, but I had been. So I didn't have a music career at the time I was doing Sesame Street. I was dead in the water. But I went from being dead in the water and blacklisted in the U.S. to reaching 72 countries of the world 3 times a day. How about that, right? They don't put that in the FBI files.
No, you're right.
So it was really a step forward for me. And the fact that I was blacklisted and did not have a different career going on at the time gave me the time to do Sesame Street and to write and do other things.
So I'm struck here now, because you go from being blacklisted to this. I saw you play this song at Mariposa, I think, a few years ago.
Oh, yeah? Was it good?
I've never heard you sing it. It was awesome.
Was it okay?
Yeah, it was killer.
It's a real songwriter's version, though.
That's what I was saying to Caitlin earlier. It was just like watching the person who wrote it sing it.
Yeah, it is.
This is, of course, Up Where We Belong, sung by Jennifer Warnes and Joe Cocker, a song you co-wrote for the movie An Officer and a Gentleman, that earns you, Buffy Sainte-Marie, your very first Oscar Academy Award, making you the first Indigenous person to ever do so. What does it feel like in that chair when you win an Oscar?
Oh, well, I was having a hard time with my co-writer, Technage. He was kind of crazy. He was kind of very upset in the car, and he had a thing about flash bulbs because he had optical migraines and things. So I arrived very unhappy and trying not to cry and just sat there through the entire ceremony. And when it was announced that we won, I couldn't believe it. I didn't think we were going to win. I didn't think we were going to win. We were just surprised, and I was just glad that I knew the evening was going to improve because the flashbulbs didn't bother him after we won.
When did it sink in, the meaning of this? When did it sink in that you won an Oscar?
It still hasn't sunk in.
Really?
It's nice, and people always bring it up and everything, but when I was a little girl, I used to read movie magazines and things, way back in the 40s. There were, photo play and things like that. And just to be a part of Hollywood in the slightest degree was just beyond my wildest dreams. But so it really hasn't sunk in. It's really very wonderful. And the Academy recently, 6 of us were named pillars of the new Academy Museum. Yeah. And I'm one of the pillars.
Oh, congratulations.
So when you go through the Academy Museum, you see that there's a pillar and it has my name carved into it. It's really nice. Sophia Loren, Hattie McDaniel, a bunch of us.
I suppose when you write a song like that, though, I don't want to be gauche here.
Go ahead.
But I bet when you write a song like that, I just know what it's like to tour as an artist. I bet when you write a song like that, your worries go away a little bit.
Your worries go away?
Yeah, because that's a big song. All of a sudden, I don't know if you need to worry so much about, oh my God, how am I going to be able to afford rent and stuff like that?
Oh, you don't make a lot of money. No, the movie company owns the publishing. You don't own the publishing.
For that song?
Yeah.
I figured, oh my God, well, Buffy's straight then, she's on Easy Street.
Well, it helps because you get more famous, and so then when you go out on the road, maybe you can, maybe they'll pay you more because you're better known. But no, I didn't make a lot of money my money has come from Until It's Time for You to Go. Which is another love song.
Beautiful song,
But
too.
a lot of people think of me as a protest writer. But the 2 songs that have really given me a career in the public have been both love songs. Until It's Time for You to Go and Up Where You Belong.
Speaking of songs, I was thinking about the podcast you were doing, and we asked Phelan Johnson.
And she's sweet.
Wonderful. We asked her I wanted to play you this. We asked her, to pick out a few favorite Buffy Sainte-Marie songs. This is what she said.
This was impossible. I'd just like to say thanks. I was like, this is so hard. It's so hard. It is so hard. She's 81, 60 years in the industry, like almost 20 albums. Like, how am I supposed to pick 5 songs?
How am I supposed to pick 5 songs? That's Phelan Johnson, the host of the new CBC podcast, Buffy. Have you learned anything new about yourself doing this podcast, recapping your life over and over again to people like me and like Phelan?
Have I learned something about myself?
Do you learn something about yourself doing a podcast about your life, being part of a podcast about your life?
You know, Tom, not at this point, because Andrea Warner wrote a biography about me.
The great Andrea Warner.
Oh, isn't she? She's such a great writer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's a good friend of mine now, too. And so I kind of went through everything with Andrea, just on the phone, very friendly phone calls that we were both really enjoying. And so we touched base on just about everything. And so the recap, the career recap and the life recaps that I've been doing, that you get to do at the, late in the day of your career. No, I don't think I learned from looking back so much, because I already did. I spend a lot of time alone on airplanes. I get a lot of time to think.
Yeah.
But no, I'm always kind of looking forward because I'm hungry to, I like to play the piano. I like to paint. I like to draw. Leave me alone. I'm busy. That's what I'm doing. So that's more important to me. I enjoy what's coming next, and I never know what that's going to be. Because for me, artwork and songs and stuff, it's like dreams. You go to bed at night, you don't know if you're going to dream or what you're going to dream about. That's why I've never been able to write like toothpaste commercials and things. When I wrote the title song for the movie Soldier Blue, the director, Ralph Nelson, said, yeah, we want you to write the title song. So I watched the movie and I said, yeah, I can't really commit to being able to write a song for, deadlines and things. I don't know if anything will pop into my head.
Yeah.
So I turned it down twice. And then, sure enough, this song pops into my head. And it did become the theme for Soldier Blue. But, as a writer, I'm just not the kind of writer that can predict anything.
Well, let me ask this then. Maybe this is a good way to close things off. So let's go back to the children's book. Your second children's book, Top Way and the Magic Hat, came out this month. You dedicate the book to the Pye Pot and Obey families of Pye Pot Reserve and Regina, Saskatchewan. Mm-hmm. What made you want to dedicate it to them?
Oh, my God, they're my family, and I love them so much. No, we're really close, and I just don't get to spend enough time with them. I've had some family members come to Hawaii and all, but I was just missing people, and I don't know. That's why. Because I love them.
Because I love them is a pretty good answer.
It's a pretty good answer.
I think you've inspired a lot of people. I think you've been through a lot, man.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
The book Top Way and the Magic Hat, I begged and pleaded with Greystone Kids Books, to also do the book in Cree.
Yeah.
And they did. So it's translated by Solomon Ratt, who's a linguist, a Cree linguist, teacher at First Nations University. And there's a website called creeliteracy.org, which is kind of a residence for Saul. And they've translated My Country 'Tis of Thy People You're Dying into Cree, and the annotated version of My Country 'Tis of Thy People You're Dying, which tells line by line what the song is about. They've also translated Star Walker and several other songs. So creeliteracy.org is really a lovely resource.
In the book itself, you teach, maybe it's a good way to close things off, you teach people like me how to say miigwech at the end of the at the end of an interview.
Well, miigwech, actually I have found out through Saul, although Crees and just about everybody use miigwech. Actually, it's more of an Ojibwe word. And what we would say in Cree would be kinanaskomitin.
Kinanaskomitin.
Kinanaskomitin. Kinanaskomitin. Yeah.
Kinanaskomitin.
That's pretty close.
Kinanaskomitin.
Well, Saul would correct us both.
Well, he can write in a few letters.
Oh, he can.
Buffy, always a pleasure.
Thanks, Tom.